Again, I'm kind of getting sick of talking about it, but because it is an important data point, we will touch on it briefly. So bear with us. Canada's CPI inflation coming in, 5.1%? Correct me if I'm wrong. 5.1%, the highest since 1991. Good year. So we got a 30-year high in CPI inflation, which is above expectations, which kind of continues to be the story, which is central bankers have been wrong. It hasn't been transitory. Inflation's been a lot stickier than people have, imagined. And, there's certainly concerns that this is going to be entrenched in people's minds, psychological buyer habits, etc. I mean, I certainly see it a lot, especially, I'm in the real estate space. And so I think like we've seen, tremendous amounts of inflation and for developers, trying to get product, materials, labor, our sector in particular has been hit probably the hardest. And so, I see it day to day, but it seems obviously widespread. But we'll turn it over to the Tom Brady of macro, Rich Diaz, for the full, quick synopsis on his views and unpack the inflation print for us.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Congratulations to Matt Stafford. Anyways, and the Super Bowl champions. But anyway, okay, here we go.
Are we gonna start calling you the Matt Stafford?
No, God, no, please. I'd rather be mortified about being Tom Brady than being mortified about Tom. Anyways, okay, here we go. So let's make this really quick because I think we're all sort of bored about talking about this. So a couple points. You said 5.1. Goods inflation I thought was really interesting. So they split it in between goods and services. Goods hit 7.2. Again, another ridiculously, decades long high. Food, which we all enjoy from time to time, is now again climbing. So that's really hurting lower income people, as we know. And to remind everyone that these numbers are probably higher than the official numbers. But anyways, all right. So a couple more things and we'll bring it home. Let's then move on. Number one is shelter component, which we've been on for a long, long time now, is 39% of the core CPI basket for those of us unaware. And that is a hit 6.2 and is becoming a growing contribution. This is true also in the US, which we've talked about several times. And then, so I'm a couple more points here, and then I'm going to hit you with some math, and then we'll switch gears. But the BOC core measures. So these are the preferred measures of inflation. There's loads and loads of papers on the Bank of Canada website that discuss this. So all three of them, one's a trimmed mean, one's a factor mean, and one, the third one, I always forget what it is. You can look them up. But these are the preferred measures of inflation that eliminate transitory factors. They're now at 20-year highs as well. So we got 4, 3, and the other one's around 2. So you guys you can check them out. We'll put them up on the video. But it's just incredible the measures that the BOC themselves designed to keep an eye out for these kinds of things and to help with monetary policy. They're just ratcheting higher and higher. And then the last two things is one, core inflation tends to track producer price indexes. Doesn't always work, but it's working really, really well now. And if you look at the PPI X energy, we shouldn't be surprised if core inflation hits 6, maybe even 7, but probably at least 6. So it's 3.5 from right now. And I don't think we should be surprised if it hits 5, 5.5, 6. That's incredible kind of overshoot. And then the tiny little piece of math that I have is, shelter's 39%. If it rises to if it rises to 3%, so if it settles rather at 3%, then the rest of the basket, the other 60%, right, has to be much, much lower than 2 for you to get that, that desired 2% CPI. Does that make sense? So if you have shelter, which is a big chunk, and that means the rest of the CPI basket has to be much, much lower than your average, right? That stated average. So I probably garbled that, but the point is that it's not transitory, and for everybody to look out for the shelter component. That's a wrap. Steve, I think I did that pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really is shocking that we printed trillions of dollars and suddenly have inflation. Shocking. But Keith, I don't know if you have any comments just to quickly sort of sum everything up here. Last comments, final thoughts.
Okay, very, very quick. This starts with a story. So what I love about inflation today, we're all just rounding it to a whole number. So like 5%, 6,
So
7%. And you guys may not realize this, but back in the early O's, the who does the inflation numbers in the US? Is it Department of...
I think it's the Census Bureau, but I always screw that up.
Yeah, I forget which one it does. So they were actually calculating it to the second and even third decimal point.
They still do, I think.
But they were only posting it to 1. And then finally they decided, you know what, we're going to post it to 2 decimal points. And Wall Street said, yeah, this is great. This is, and everyone got excited about it. And I'm sitting there saying, geez, guys, like I don't know why that's so great. But anyway, the point is, years ago, inflation was so benign, it didn't matter that, all of the economists, in the back room, they wanted to report this number to the 2 and 3 decimal points. Like that's how cool they thought this was. Fast forward, 20 plus years later, we're just rounding it up. Pretty soon, maybe we'll go to, around to the nearest 5. So that's one observation with the story. Okay. So the real quick thing is I look at it from a market perspective all the time. It's starting to play out the way I think it's going to. The bond markets they're still getting whacked almost every day here. That could be over soon. But remember, we equity markets are selling off, currencies are selling off, credit spreads are selling off. Everything is getting hit pretty hard here. So it's lined up exactly for Powell to take the fall. And the last thing would be really to have the US dollar, go ratchet up pretty higher. So that we're on the verge of maybe that happening. So what could happen if you actually look at estimates for US Federal Reserve price action or rate hikes? They're not only are they calling for rate hikes, but further out they're calling for rate cuts. So they're sort of seeing it going like this and down again. And then, Rich, I think you tweeted out was it the 2-year yield that you tweeted out a couple of days ago? I saw it. It's a beautiful, beautiful chart. Thank you for sharing that. And but it really shows how messed up financial markets are. Sorry, how messed up the Fed is and other central banks with trying to align this with what's happening with the real world. But my point is, though, that a lot of these things in the markets are way ahead of central banks. And sometimes they can sort of make they may not even need to do rate cuts at the end of the day, because things would get so bad from a financial market perspective that they could come out and say, hey, we don't want to do this. And by the way, some of the people on my network, they were sharing with me that over last weekend, Yellen, she's the finance story. She's the Treasury these days. Yeah, Treasury in the US, of course, FinMin everywhere else. There's a pretty big push around the world from the Treasury departments. Hey, they want more QE, not less QE. So, that's likely where we're going on the backside of this year. So anyway, that's it on the inflation side.